And when I started, it seemed to be this thing where if people think you're good, they'll book you and you'll just get a gig, and then it will just like climb up until you get to a point where you can live off the thing that you love doing. That's what I envision, because I absolutely love performing live and I love writing and composing music. It's everything to me. But I didn't know going into it that being a musician that actually gets paid for their work, you actually don't have to be very good at anything. You don't have to be talented. You don't have to be hardworking. You don't have to have a good work ethic. You don't even have to be nice as a person. You don't even have to be kind or compassionate. You can be a complete piece of rubbish and also have no talent and still make money. And really, that's all based on malleability. And I'm not a malleable person. If someone tells me to do something and I don't like it, I'm not doing it. And that's always been my way. I've been like that since I was a child. But also, I've never really seen the importance of doing what you're told to do by someone who's trying to control you. I don't see that as like their intention is not to be kind or considerate or even hone whatever talent or gift you have. It's just to control you, right? And I think what I have found hardest about trying to do music the way that I thought you had to do music was the amount of abuse I was expected to tolerate, the amount of absolute garbage coming out of people's mouths, whether it was something abusive about what I wore, what I looked like, what my hair looked like, how much I weighed, what I sung about, what I talked about on stage, what I talked about off stage. There was so much people tried to restrict me with. I couldn't understand that, because I'm assuming that people try to control others because they want you to be something that the rest of the public will like, but there's already plenty of that. So it's like, well, if there's something like that already, I'm not going to be that. But I'll tell you what really got to me the most. It wasn't the instances of being sexually harassed and even some cases sexually assaulted by bookers, managers, other musicians, everything, like people online. It was the dozens and dozens and dozens of people, including apparently family, not anymore, friends, not anymore, and fans, not anymore, who told me that this was what I was meant to tolerate, that this is like what I have to do. I have to tolerate this in order to get to greatness, in order to be great as a musician. And by great, I mean be seen as great in the eyes of those more powerful and richer than me. I have to tolerate it. I think that's been the worst part about doing music. It hasn't been the instances of abuse as such, because I am no stranger to abuse. I am no stranger to harassment. I've been abused since I was born by family members, and then later on in school, and then later on as a young adult. I am no stranger to that. That's not a new thing. I have, however, always been someone that doesn't believe that should be happening. But what I have fast discovered, even at a very, very young age, that it is totally expected of me to tolerate and put up with it in order to step into greatness, to step into society's version of success, which is rich and famous, or to get that job, to get that step up in what is always a capitalistic venture. It's never about your sense of like emotional security or your physical well-being. It's always based in what other people think of you. So the only way people judge you, I think, and I know, the only things people judge you on is your status in society, i.e. your job, how much you earn, what kind of car you drive, what kind of house you live in, what status you are. And I don't care about those things because I don't come from those kind of really high-end things. And I know that they have no value. And I've met, dated, worked, been friends with, lived with people who are very rich or very privileged, and they are just emotionally inept and morally bankrupt. But because they are rich because they have a certain stake in society that's quite high and considered a high position, they're seen as better people, because money does that. Money and power do that. They convince everyone that if someone has money and power, or one of the two, then that somehow they are a better person than someone who doesn't have that. I don't come from money, I don't come from power, I don't come from high status. But one thing I do have that most people don't have is I know the difference between right and wrong in terms of being treated poorly and being treated fairly. And I think what got to me about making music the way that I was expected to was I was meant to put that aside completely and allow people to treat me very badly in exchange for getting on stage and singing songs. And I don't know if any singers have gone through this, but when I was doing that, when I was kind of like feeling the ick of a booker or a performance slot I was doing, my voice would pack up. It would literally stop working. I lost about maybe 8 notes of my octave for about a year back in like 2014. And I went to I traveled so far around London to these vocal coaches that were really good to try and find out what it was, and they all said it's got nothing to do with your physicality. I went to hospitals, I had cameras shoved down my nose quite a lot of times. I went to physio at St. Bart's in central London, all because I couldn't sing, and there was nothing physically wrong. Like, I got soft nodules really early on in 2012 because I was smoking and drinking late at night and eating really bad food late at night and having acid reflux and just basically physically ruining my voice. But after that I still had trouble. Nothing physically wrong with me after that, because those soft nodules disappeared after rest, but I kept having issues, and I just realized that it was just psychological. And one coach said to me, this is not got anything to do with your physicality, there's something going on here. And she was right. I don't think people understand how harmful it is to do music. I don't think people understand how harmful it is that the very world that we see as like the only world to do music, i.e. you go out there, you do a few gigs, you get spotted, you get asked to do gigs, you do everything for free, and then someone will reward you, someone higher up than you will just go, oh my god, and they'll click their fingers and then you'll be rewarded. That only works if you're willing to tolerate being treated like shit. If you're in my position, if you're someone who comes from a music family, or you're connected to someone who has a studio or anything like that, that's different. Like, you're not gonna be subjected to that kind of abuse in that way. It won't be that blatant and it won't be that clear cut. It'll be different, but it'll still be there. And I just feel that the most disappointment I feel about this doing music the way I used to do it, again, are the people who stood there, heard me talk about it online or offline to their faces, and tell me, well, that's what you just have to deal with. You're a girl, or you're a woman, you're wearing a dress, you look like this, what do you expect, what do you expect, what do you expect? As if somehow me doing a thing that brings me so much joy, that joy needs to be stripped off of me in order for me to do more of the thing that brings me joy. But in my mind, I kept thinking, well, how can I do the thing that brings me joy if I'm constantly being thrown down with each big step I make, with each venue that has a bigger crowd? I'm getting treated more and more like a piece of meat. I'm getting spoken to in a very condescending, patronizing way. People, like bookers, are making sexist jokes right in front of me, talking about my outfit as if I'm not there, you know, going online and commenting on my body as if I should be grateful for the attention of that. And I don't think I'm ever going to forgive the people who had nothing to say about it, or told me, well, what can you do? There's nothing we can do. I'm not going to be able to forgive any of them, because ultimately it's not the perpetrator themselves that is the cause of pain when someone gets subjected to this. It's the people who stand around and told me that's the way it is. That was more traumatizing than the event itself, because it's one thing when one person does something really, really bad to me. It's one thing when one person does it. But in some ways, I don't know how anyone else feels about this, but in some ways, because it's one person, I don't have to believe it's anyone else because only one person tried to touch me inappropriately or spoke to me in an inappropriate manner or, you know, sent me sexually graphic, nasty things online. But when dozens of people come out the woodwork when I talk about it, whether it's former friends of mine I had, people online, so-called fans, who comment or DM me saying, well, that's what happens when you're posted online, that's what's gonna happen, this is just what happens. There's no clear, that's unacceptable, give me their details. Or that's not acceptable, I'll share that screenshot of that person doing that to you, because that's unacceptable. Instead, when people make it about, well, you've clearly invited that because you exist, what do you expect? That's more traumatizing because I realized that that perpetrator did something that made me feel very unsafe and violated, but now I know that the majority of people around me will absolutely do the same thing. They will jump the gun to do it. They will align with that perpetrator and go, well, yeah, I mean, what do you expect? You're a woman online. What do you expect? You do this, you wore this outfit, you know, this. And I don't think people understand the impact they're having on people who are treated like that. And I know there are people out there who get treated like this and then think, well, if I get treated like this, then so should you. I know there's plenty of, for example, women who do that to other women. There's loads. In fact, most of them do that. It takes a very wise, intelligent person to go, this happened to me, I didn't like it, I will advocate for myself and for others. And that means that there's no tolerance for this, no tolerance whatsoever. It doesn't matter what this woman did anywhere else. If this is happening, no tolerance. But that's not the case. And it's scary. So now how I do music is, I've recorded dozens and dozens of songs that I absolutely love, and I listen to them all the time when I'm walking around. I put my headphones in, go into my files, look into my mixes, and play them, and I think, oh my god, I love what I've written here, I love what I've produced, I love what I've done. Nice big helicopter there. And I don't even want to share them with the public. I don't even want to share them online. I don't want to share them with Facebook or Instagram or any streaming services. It's like, because I've just ceased to care. Sorry. Well, I shouldn't be saying sorry, they're flying over me. I've ceased to care what anyone thinks about my music because I know that it doesn't actually matter. That people who believe they connected with me and my music certainly did not connect with me as a person, because nobody was in my corner when I was going through terrible, terrible times. Nobody was like going, that's terrible, what can I do to help? Nothing. And I'm kind of used to that to an extent because my own family members don't care about me and they don't care about my well-being, they don't care about what I do, they don't care about my existence. So I am used to understanding and acknowledging and accepting that the general public aren't going to care about me either. But when people only respond and only have something to say when it's to disagree with the fact that I'm calling something crappy out, that's the danger. That's what makes me go, why the fuck should I share my music publicly? Why should I do that? Why I should just make it for me, really. If being a musician and being quote unquote rich and famous and therefore apparently successful in the eyes of you, the public, means having to be dehumanized to get there, I'm not taking that. It doesn't make any sense. The music I would make would be shit. That's why most of the music is shit, because people are being forced to make music in ways they don't want to make it, and they are contractual. Sometimes it's contractual, and other times it's just peer pressure. But I don't know how to share my music in some ways. I don't really think anyone out there is worth making it for, and that's why I've been making tons of music for the last 2 years on my own, in my bedroom, you know, learning tips by myself, learning it all by myself, sometimes with some help if I can get it, but most of the time just by ear. But I just want to make it obvious that that's why I've been so quiet, because I have my Patreon, and that's for people who help me put money back into my music and into the projects that make my music. But it's why I've changed the way I've done music. I don't just put on videos online of me doing my newest songs, because I just don't think the audience watching me, I don't think they deserve it. I don't think they deserve to have it. I don't think they deserve to see me at my most vulnerable and at my most raw and at my most, creative time. Because there has been no evidence that there has been a consistent desire to tend to and protect the so-called musician behind these songs. Especially when that musician, i.e. me, when I have called stuff out. And it's just bugged me for years. It's bugged me for years. It's bugged me to be right. And it bugged me when Me Too happened and suddenly everyone apparently at least by lip service has suddenly had a conscience and was like, oh yeah, this is terrible. But again, there's a very big difference between saying things and posting things and liking things and actually living it. And I know that I live it. I know that I live a life where I call out this shit and I stand firm in my decisions. And I am not going to be swayed by money or by opportunities, even though I don't call them opportunities anymore. I call them ransom notes, because in order for me to take on that quote unquote opportunity / ransom, I have to sacrifice something pretty freaking vital to me in order to do it. So I just don't. This is just a ramble, but that's how I've been feeling. That is why I've been quiet. That's why I don't want to post much. And maybe I'll change my mind, but I don't feel like the world is getting more compassionate. I think people are getting more selfish and more self-serving, and it's completely backwards. That's why music is so confusing to me sometimes. You make something that's meant to bring people together, and yet people work really, really hard to divide themselves. They work really hard to stay in their little comfort zones and never grow and never question and never explore and never be curious, because that would mean questioning everything that you've ever been told or been brought up with. And that is just too much. That's just too much hard work. It's too much hard work. Whereas I don't see it like that. I think it's hard work to keep a facade up. I think it's hard work to mask. I think it's hard work to keep smiling whilst people are being disgusting. I think it's hard work to pretend that everything's great when it's actually I feel like there's a pit in my stomach that's getting bigger and bigger. That's too much hard work to keep ignoring. Yeah. So that's it. That's why music has been hard, and I don't know what I'm gonna do next. But I feel like posting this video maybe I won't post it. I don't know, but I'll try it. But I don't know what I'm gonna do next. I've just had COVID as well. I'm really unwell. And even though I'm over the worst of it, it's still dragging, and I think it's making me question a lot of things. When I'm sick and I'm forced to be in bed and I'm not moving around as much or doing as much, I'm a lot more reflective, and I think telling the truth about how I've really felt about this is important, because I don't want people to feel that I'm a kind of musician they can project onto me. I am the kind of musician that I'm telling you I am, and people can take it or leave it, but I don't care, because I know that what I choose to do is compassionate and kind for everyone, not just myself. So, with that in mind, I would say goodbye, and I'll see what happens next.